Afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dojo Live. I'm Tulio Siragusa, broadcasting from Southern California, and I am joined today by my co-hosts, Kim Lantis, who is in Hermosillo, Mexico. Hi,
Hey,
Kim.
Theo.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
And Carlos Ponce, who's in Cuernavaca, Mexico.
Yes,
Nice
Get it
finally,
right.
pronunciation.
finally. You're getting it right. You're
I've
getting
been
it right.
getting it right. I've been getting it right after a while. Welcome back, Carlos. I know you were on vacation for a little
Oh,
bit.
yes.
We
Yeah.
missed you. Not really. Just kidding. No, we definitely missed you. Thank you for being back.
Yeah.
And let's not forget why we do this. We have our guest, Jonathan Keim, who's joining us from Ohio. Hi, Jonathan. Welcome to Dojo Live.
Thank you, sir. Looking forward to being here.
Excellent. Let's get to know you a little bit. Tell us about Jonathan. Tell us a little bit about you. Let the audience get to know you a little bit.
Okay, well, I'll go back kind of early to the beginning, kind of like the bio that was presented earlier. I first started a business when I was 12 years old, fixing computers, doing networking, things like that. I was actually doing even before that, but that's when the word started to spread to friends and families and new circles. And then I started trading stocks when I was 15, and I would have done it sooner if someone would have just told me, but somehow a friend of the family got on the subject, and he told me about custodial accounts. So within about a week, I was starting to trade stocks, and I stumbled across various newsletters. One of those was Quality Stocks, which is part of Investor Brand Network, and that's why I'm here today.
Wow. Trading stock at 15, getting a fixing computer at 12. We are not worthy.
Yeah, I'm 38 and I've never traded a stock in my life. So.
Shame on you. No, probably saved yourself a lot of headache. Hey, Jonathan, let's get to know your company, Investor Brand Network. Tell us a little bit about what gave birth to this idea. What do you guys do? What's this business about?
So going back to the very first brand, Quality Stocks, I stumbled across that because they covered all the other stock newsletters. And that was really the birth of the idea that continued to mushroom into a much bigger brand network with many different newsletters. We now have 21. And then we also got in early with social media back in 2008. We now have over 2 million likes and followers between all of our 50 plus different brands. But it always goes back to providing content that our audiences are looking for. So for instance, why I was hooked in at 16 years old, and that was the first year of Quality Stocks operation, was because it had so much great data. I could see which stocks are being talked about the most, how they're trading, volume, percentage gains on a daily basis, all that good stuff. And, they had other content on their clients, of course, but I reached out to Michael McCarthy. He was very interested in what I was doing and wanted me to be part of the team. And so we hit it off, and about 6 months later, I was director of communications. At the time, there were only 4 of us. Now there's more than 60 in 17 different states and on up to Canada.
Wow, congratulations. Sounds like
So you were director of communications at like 17, or how old were you?
Yeah, so I was 17 at the time, and I'm 30 now.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly. Back in the day, many, many, many years ago, there were kings that were like 15, 20-year-old. But they only lived to 35 back then. So they try to squeeze in a lot of things earlier. So, back then, like when you were 18, you were pretty much a senior. So let's introduce the topic. Let's go right into it because I would like to learn more. And I know you got some nice things to show us as well today. So, Kim, will you please introduce the topic today?
Sure. Thanks, Tulio. And thank you for being here, Jonathan. So today's topic is the digital evolution, maximizing your impact. So we're going to be talking and seeing a plethora of ideas and strategies to increase your influence as well as make more memorable impressions. So what is this plethora all about, and how is the digitalizing, right, ourselves evolving, and how can we maximize that? I understand that you have a plethora of ideas to share with us.
I do. And, it's going to be more of a quick overview and more of like a list, because to really be effective in any one area, you have to be at least somewhat of an expert. We all start as amateurs and we get better over time. But some of the different things have been really effective for us. I mentioned newsletters, and really anything that would be a subscription format, whether it's podcast subscribers or text blasting, or on and on and on. You want to continue to increase the ways that you can reach out to your audiences whenever you want to, versus hoping they stumble across you again. Beyond that, engaging in as much conversation as possible, like hashtag tweets, becoming a speaker at all the many different virtual events. Beyond that, guest blogging. It goes on and on and on. But I would say one of the keys to our success specifically is being very specialized. So we have a brand just for psychedelic news, for instance, and we also have cannabis and hemp and CBD, and others might try to bring that all together into one brand. We have 7. Even on the cannabis side, we've got 420 with CMW, which comes out every day at 4:20 a.m. and 4:20 p.m. And it just goes on from there.
420. That is not a coincidence, is it?
All right.
So talking about specializing, let's go back to what would you say would help me make that decision and what I'm supposed to attempt to specialize in with all of the different items that you listed. What helps in the decision making?
So, I would first look at, key strengths. So for instance, if you're a better writer, focus on blogs and social media posts. If you're better at speaking, find speaking engagements, host your own podcast, get on other podcasts, and then just kind of, spiderweb out from there.
So curious, Jonathan, there's, an explosion of influencers, or definitely want to be influencers today, right? There's so much content and there's some great ideas. But one of the key things you mentioned here is how to increase your influence. So what are some of the ways to increase your ability to either gain more audience as well as the impact you're having with your message? Assuming you've got some good message or content you want to share, how do you maximize on that? And how does your company, IBN, come into play to enable that?
Sure. So I would go back to a really basic principle. Use the bait that the fish wants. So, that would be the most important thing to start attracting an audience. And I don't know, it's always hard to, boil it down to a few sentences. But I also think it's really important to be accommodating. That's another core part of our strategy. So, for instance, we work with a lot of event partners. We've got over 50 now. We also syndicate our data to over 5,000 syndication partners. Nobody else has been able to do that. And it's been hard. Everybody has their favorite XML format. Some people want the meta description data to be either like Tuesday or TUE, GMT time versus maybe Eastern time. It goes on and on and on. But when it comes to building an audience, having those multiple forms of subscription, some people like Instagram, some people can't stand Facebook, just getting on as many channels as you can, cross-marketing them, making sure that's very easy for people to find those and follow you would be a good place to start.
Jonathan, I have a question for you. And we're talking about, when I hear the words influence or influencer, making memorable impressions, just like the tagline of today's conversation says, what I think of is the people behind the messaging, behind what's being said, right? So it's about the human part. So how would you say that the technology or digital platforms can best help or boost the whatever influence or whatever impression is being made in a way that it's still going to remain human? Is it about the reach and the spread, the ease of reaching out to a lot of people, or what is this about? Or is this about AI? Where would you say that the digital technologies boost the influence and the impressions that humans make? I know this is a very open-ended question, but I'm still interested in your opinion about this. Thank you.
Yep. So the human side is definitely very important. You don't want to lose that. It's okay to, sometimes use a really catchy graphic that would really stand out in a feed as people are scrolling through, whether on their desktops or their mobile phones. But if you were to blend the two, that would be best. One thing I would just present as an idea, if you had a Facebook page, really think about the logo side. That logo is what's attached to the left side of every post. It doesn't need to be your regular logo. You could make it stand out more by having an orange background and maybe changing your logo to just be white, kind of like on top of it. There's all kinds of different things you could do that you wouldn't necessarily need a human element. I mean, if you had a face in there, it'd be really hard to see, especially on a mobile phone. But then in your actual post, you would have maybe a picture that not only has a real photo of you or something that would be more on a human level, but putting it either in a nice frame or using a filter that would just make it stand out a little bit more. Kind of blending the two, I think, would probably be the best approach.
Thanks. Thank you, Jonathan. That was my question to you.
So walk us through IBN. How do you help? What is it that you guys are offering to facilitate this?
Sure. So where the conversation often begins is how many public companies we've helped in the past. So if you want to zoom in on my screen, I'll demonstrate a little bit what we've done in our studio.
Let's check it out.
All right. So there we go. So this is one of our many different scenes that we have. This is how we display our, actually, I guess on the other side, it's mirrored for me. But, the many companies that we've serviced over the last almost 15 years now. Beyond that, we have different transitions as we go from different sections of our demonstration. We break for comments. And, at the end of our demonstration, we have this cycle through. And we just try to bring in as much animation as possible. Beyond that, as we're going through the different OTT platforms we're on, such as Apple TV, Roku, we zoom in on the actual TV. And then as we're switching inputs, rather than have a black screen, we'll switch to this. So this is what the viewer is seeing as I'm fumbling through the different HDMI ports. And then we come back to Roku and then switch over to Amazon. And once Amazon's ready, go back to the TV. We also have a green screen. Another thing we do just to, again, just make that most memorable impression is, go full screen with our episodes rather than show it on the TV. Normally, we just show about 20 seconds of this to explain how we add B-roll footage to all of our audio content. And of course, we can do full videos too. But those are just some different components of what we've built beyond what you already know. Man, it's hard to even know where to start. I guess let's talk about the 5,000 syndication partners, for instance. When we put together an article, it just doesn't go on our 50 plus brands. It'll show up on Apple News. It'll show up, if they're doing a full press release, it'll come up on Yahoo Finance. But even for articles, we can get on Market Watch whenever we want. We can do Bloomberg. And it just helps maximize that reach for our clients that are trying to reach new investors that haven't heard of them yet.
That's Ruben, are you listening? Ruben, you in here?
Tulio and Keim. Yeah, I was going to say, I just remembered a very scene from a very old Meg Ryan movie. And then what I would say is this: I'll have what he's having.
Exactly. So your clients not only get all this tools and technology to make memorable impressions, right? But you're also helping them syndicate their message through your network of affiliate stations or outlets, media outlets. And how did you go about building that? Was that, and how do you keep expanding? How do you choose the partners to keep adding on? And why would they continue to join? How do you go about doing that?
So again, it goes back to content. So whether we're baiting an investor to start following one of our newsletters or baiting someone like Apple News or Dow Jones Factiva to take our content, we want to make sure it's what they're looking for. Trying to think about, what was the second part of your question?
Well, I'm curious how you go about validating what outlets to continue to add into your syndication. Like, I mean, you said you have 5,000 partners, but is it whoever's willing to showcase the information, or do you have a process to validate people? I mean, those outlets coming on board and giving that access to your clients? How do you go about validating who to add and why?
Well, it really comes down to we really love big numbers. So unless it's a very obscure site or something that we wouldn't want to be affiliated with, and I'll just let you use your imaginations. There's all kinds of things out there on the internet. We wouldn't openly let them have access to our feed. But ultimately, we want to get as much distribution as possible. At the bottom of every article, it has a link to our full disclaimer. So we work as hard as we can to protect ourselves, but we're also at the same time, increasing our distribution. And, we have some pretty interesting ones if you go through the whole list.
Great. So walk us through a little bit, assuming Dojo Live, right? We want to get syndicated across all these media outlets. Right now, we broadcast live across 14 different mediums, and we'd like to get on every medium out there. How do we go about doing that?
So we make it really, really easy for our clients. Probably the easiest piece of content we put out is called a network news break, and we switch it up a little bit. So if they're in, let's say cannabis, we would do cannabis news break or crypto news break if they're in the blockchain. But all these news breaks it's just a one paragraph summary of whatever the content is. It could be a previous press release. It could be a full length article that we wrote. It could be a full length article that was on Fox News. It could be really anything, including a podcast or a YouTube video. So we have that little bit of a summary, and then we have a link, to view the video, click here, or to see the full article, click here. So some people don't need to see any more than our little one paragraph recap. They scroll past that. They see a little about you as the company, not just that one hook, maybe an industry related topic, but they actually see who you are, as a company as a whole, and then a link to your direct website. So that would be a very easy way to do it. Another way is to be part of our continuing content generation program. We've got tons of writers. Most of our staff is, a writer of some kind. Obviously, that's how I got started. So we would either cover the topics you give us, or we would come up with our own, get your approval, and then just blast it everywhere.
How do you keep up with the various changing platform do you spend a lot of time building plugins or APIs to all these different channels? Or I think you said earlier using mostly XML feeds. How are you keeping up with the ever changing, technical evolving world? How do you guys do that?
So most of our partners will let us know if a change is needed, but we do use Meltwater to keep everyone honest. So if there is a partner that has fallen off the wagon, we can see that very easily and then ask them, what's going on.
Okay, so most of this is used to syndicate news or articles to gain more presence for influencers to have more impact. Are there any companies like large enterprise organization using this kind of platform and technology for internal purposes, or are you guys strictly doing the sort of the syndication and propagation of the content to gain access to media outlets, or are you also licensing the piece of technology that enables organizations to use these tools to jazz up their message and make it more compelling and more memorable, even for internal use? Are any plans of doing that, or are you doing that now?
We get requests all the time to white label from investor relations firms and public relations firms. We don't have any plans to do that, but we're very friendly, so we can co-brand. Whenever a company wants to put out an official announcement, it would basically be all them. Normally, we have our corporate communications contact at the bottom, but yeah, as far as turning over the reins and there wouldn't be a single mention of Investor Brand Network, we're not doing that at this time.
Cool. Well, you can see there's an appreciation for the technology and the platform itself. So I was curious if you're getting people asking. Kudos to you for having built something that seems pretty interesting and easy to use. In terms of using the platform, is this something, for example, where an organization that is publishing content can do themselves? Do you license it where they can just use it themselves, or do they send over the content to you and then you guys basically propagate it? How does that work?
So there's two different kinds of content. There's the sponsored content where we're putting it out with our voice, whether it's a particular brand or Investor Brand Network itself. And then the other side would be them putting out communication. So we do help them build up their social media audiences, for instance. In addition to that, there's press release announcements. So I don't know if you or any of your listeners follow any publicly traded companies, but the majority of investors will go to MarketWatch or Yahoo Finance, type in the symbol or company name, maybe Apple, maybe Tesla, and see what their latest announcements are. So when we're helping one of our clients put out an announcement like that, it'd be different than if it comes from us. So in that case, they would send us the draft. We would provide what we call enhancement suggestions. So it's not just moving around commas, but we've worked with, countless IR and PR teams. We've learned a lot doing thousands of these press releases over the years. So we'll help them make it better, maybe a better headline. Sometimes 30% of it gets rewritten. Sometimes, we bring in industry-related topics to expand or help the audience better understand what's going on with the announcement. Sometimes companies just assume people know as much as they do, and they don't have enough context. So we help through that whole process before it goes live on the wire.
Jonathan, I have a quick question. Of course, what I'm hearing is that you deal with a lot of how can I say this? With a lot of productions or with a lot of companies that generate different types of content. In your experience, what sort of, and this is particularly interested because related to what here with Doja, in terms of format, what sort of format have you seen that works better, and for what types of industries? Is there like an average type of format that you feel works better, or how does it work?
So my favorite format personally is a blend. So with our full-length articles, right underneath the title, there's 3 to 5 bullet points. And if that's all a person reads, that's all they really need to know. If they want more meat, they'll see it all underneath. And if they keep scrolling, they'll see a link back to our client's website and other things that they can do, such as subscribe for future news from that company, or see our profile, which we bring in a corporate media kit, which is a really nice flipbook format. We find that actually, talking about what increases engagement, if you have something almost like a picture book, rather than point them just to a website where they might go to 2 and 3 pages and leave, that's industry average, they'll go through 15 pages without even thinking about it, and they'll get the whole story. Of course, they might not know all the details of the story, but it's more important that they start at the cover and they go through and they see how maybe that particular article or news announcement relates to the bigger picture, and to draw them in that way.
So, Jonathan, I have a question about how you go about attracting the talent that comes to work for you. And the reason I ask this question is because you guys have reinvented PR, basically, right? I mean, it used to be a public relations firm, would help with creative, would help with messaging. They managed the outlets, with the reporters, the analysts, etc., but didn't necessarily have a platform or technology to go and push this out, right? So you guys have actually reinvented PR in essence by providing those concierge services, but also you have a platform and you're building access to outlets and continuously adding more to this platform. So you've got more in-house control of distribution than, say, a PR agency that would basically, do all the manual work in the past. So when you go about hiring people, how do you go about explaining the company? Do you consider yourself a tech company, or do you consider yourself a PR company, or both? How do you go about explaining the business model so that people can kind of wrap their heads around, oh, it's PR, but it's tech. It's both. Give us a little bit of an insight on that, please.
Sure. So we would call ourselves a corporate communications firm. And oftentimes when I'm going through the demonstration, doing all the visuals, you got the chance to see a few of them, but we have plenty more, especially with the green screen. And we built a website just for the demonstration. And after we're done, we send the link so they can dive in deeper. But as far as explaining, what we're doing to someone that's completely new to this, oftentimes I say, we're not really IR, not really PR. Some consider us a blend of both. We definitely achieve many of the same objectives, but the way that we do it is through content creation and distribution to as many audiences as possible.
So, not to press on this, you consider yourself a media company, a
We would just say corporate communications firm.
That's it.
And just leave it at that.
Don't put it into a bucket. I get it. I appreciate that. All right. Well, thanks for sharing all that with us. It sounds like a really compelling solution to organizations that are looking for that. Let's, as we wrap up, any words of wisdom for those companies that perhaps are sitting on the fence about, can we afford to have this kind of service? Should we invest in it? Why should we do it? What's typically the hurdle for most organizations to gain this kind of access and tap into this help in order for them to become more influential, make a bigger impact, and obviously create more opportunities for themselves by becoming more memorable? What are some of the hurdles you typically find, and how do you help those organizations get past them?
We find the hurdles disappear after they go through a demonstration, because they understand that we have guaranteed content. We're not begging anyone to write. We've got great writers on staff, and we've got guaranteed distribution. And I think the biggest part on that side is that we can reach the same audiences over and over again. I always go back to the rule of 7. Average person needs to see something an average of 7 times before they engage. And that doesn't mean buying stock or buying product. That means as little of an interaction as going to a website for the first time or following on Twitter. But in terms of can someone afford it? I'm really glad that we introduced a newswire back in, I think it was late 2015, and since then we've introduced about 12 others that are more sector specific, including our more recent one. The last one actually that just launched is InvestorWire. But with that service, a press release is as little as $495, and then with that, you also tap into our social media audiences. So the same way as Cision, which owns PR Newswire, or Business Wire, one of the other ones, every time they put out a press release, they put it out on their social media channel. Well, we do the same thing, but we have much bigger reach. So you get that direct reach, even if journalists don't cover your news, basically, is what I'm trying to say. But we've got everything, up and beyond that. Well,
thanks for sharing. I just learned something new today. Used to be the Apollo Project was something sponsored, I think, by Procter & Gamble and another agency. They had done a study which required people to see the same medium, and the same message in 3 different mediums 3 different times in order to influence the decision. Looks like now we're up to 7. Kind of tells you how much distractions we have as a society, that we have to see something 7 times before we get influenced. But thanks for sharing all this wonderful information with us. We wish you a lot of success. We're wrapping up now. Thanks for joining us. We should look into this, guys. I like what we learned today, and I hope many others who are listening do as well. Carlos, what do we got coming up for the rest of the week?
We got a full all things. Yeah, I'm sorry, Kim. I'm sorry. Well, anyway. Yeah, well, we have a full week of all things digital. Tomorrow we have a double whammy, one in the morning, I believe, and this is going to be with Paula Tompkins, the CEO and founder of ChannelNet. The topic is creating relevant contextual experience to drive digital customer engagement. And then at 1:00 p.m. Pacific, we have avoiding. This is the topic that I think it's fun. Avoiding noisy neighbors by delivering from the edge. This is about digital distribution, and it's going to be with Matt Levine, the CTO of Cache Fly. And finally, on Thursday, we have the future of digital innovation with Ross Morrell, the founder and CEO of Frog Slayer. So that's what we have for the rest of this week, folks. Stay tuned right here on Dojo Live for great tech stories, the stories that bring us together.
Thanks for joining us. Stay
Thank
safe.
you. And go vote.